Iran is once again in the global spotlight as mass protests sweep across the country from Tehran's historic bazaars to distant provincial towns. What began as an anger over a collapsing currency and soaring food prices has now rapidly turned into one of the most widespread waves of unrest the Islamic Republic has seen in years. As the Iranian rial hits record lows, daily demonstrations are growing louder, deadlier and more political. According to reports, over 500 have been killed, thousands arrested, and the government has responded with internet shutdowns and stark warnings. Tonight, we take a closer look at why this protest began, how economic frustration evolved into open defiance, and what this moment means for Iran's future. The overview of this mass demonstration erupted in Iran on December 28, 2025. Initially triggered by economic collapse and a sharp currency devaluation, and rapidly evolved into nationwide anti-government protests. Within 2 weeks, unrest spread across all 31 provinces, making it one of the largest protest movements since the 2022 protests called the Women, Life, Freedom Uprising. The protests have resulted in over 500 deaths, thousands of arrests, widespread internet shutdowns, and an increasingly scrutinized and securitized state response. As economic grievances turned into direct political challenges to the Islamic Republic. The initial spark was a severe economic shock. On December 28, the Iranian rial plunged to 1.42 million rials per US dollar, its lowest value ever recorded. This means things priced in dollars like imported goods, fuel or medicine became much more expensive for people in Iran. Iran was already experiencing annual inflation exceeding 50%, with sharp increases in food staples, fuel, medicine, housing costs, and earlier in December, the government raised prices for subsidized gasoline, worsening public anger. These pressures disproportionately affected bazaar merchants, small business owners, urban working class households. The first demonstration broke out in Tehran's major markets, particularly the Grand Bazaar, historically a focal point for political unrest. Keeping aside that, if we talk about how the protests developed, then it started between December 28 to 31st, when the economic protests turned political. Then on December 28, demonstrations began in downtown Tehran market after the currency crash. December 29, protests spread to other cities. Police deployed tear gas. Central Bank Governor Mohammad Raza Farzin resigned. Next, on December 30, the protests reached universities and more cities. President Masoud Pezeshkian met business leaders, promises and economic reform. December 31st, Abdol Nasser Hemati appointed new central bank chief. Violent clashes reported in Far province, after protesters stormed the governor's office. Reaching the new year from January 1 to 3, first that an escalation started, when in January 1, the first official fatalities confirmed. At least 7 killed, with intense violence in Lorestan, Isfahan and Chahar Mahal, and also Bakhtiari. January 2, US President Donald Trump publicly warns Iran against killing protesters, escalating international tensions. On January 3rd, Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei labeled protesters rioters who must be put in their place, seen as authorization for harsher repression. HRANA reports stated then that 15 were killed and 580 arrested in a single day. On January 6 to 10, nationwide unrest and crackdown. January 6, sit-in and Tehran's Grand Bazaar dispersed by tear gas. Death toll reaches 36. Protests spread to 27 provinces. And on coming down to January 8, nighttime mass protests following a call by Iran's exiled crown prince. Government imposes nationwide internet and international phone shutdowns. January 9, death toll rises to 65 with over 2,300 detainees. Next, on January 10th, two-week mark reached. At least 116 people killed, according to updates. Iran's Attorney General declares protesters enemies of God, a charge punishable by death. While the protests began over inflation, currency, collapse, rising living cost, they rapidly evolved into explicit political dissent, including anti-government chants, criticism of the supreme leader, calls against cleric rule, and this mirrors a familiar pattern in Iran, where economic protests often evolve into systematic political challenges once repression begins. The answer to how the government has reacted to all this is absurd. The state response has included live ammunition, tear gas, mass arrests, where thousands detained, internet and communication blockout, threats of capital punishment under quoted enemy of God, charges framing protests as foreign-backed unrest.
هرچند بیا این بر من اینجا
گرفتی اون صحنه رو؟
آره اسلامی
بریم بگیریم گرفتنه؟
پلیس بیاد کنار
به میدون این انقلابن همه مشکل دارن اما اجازه نمیدن اجنبی براشون تصمیم بگیرن اجازه نمیدن آمریکا و اسرائیل براشون تصمیم بگیرن بذار مردمی که نظاره‌گر ما بدونن ما شعارمون پیام گرانی هست همین شعار هم بگیم شعار هر ایرانی توقف گرانی هر ایرانی توقف گرانی شعار هر ایرانی توقف گرانی شعار هر ایرانی توقف قبول کنم این شعار باید بهتر بگیره ما از سر شکمگیری نیومدیم اما آرمان هامون رو رعایت کنیم همه مردم بفهمن شعار هر ایرانی توقف گرانی
مارکوسته رو بزنید ننش رو بگاهید بیشرف 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 آره
بیا ممکنه بیا ممکنه بمب گرفتن شما نه چی اومدن
مارکوسته رو بزنید ننش رو بگاهید
چی اومدن اینجا؟
اسرائیل مرگ بر اسرائیل مرگ بر آمریکا ای لشکر حیدر جبران خنجر یمنی را بران ای ملت آباده ای ملت آباده ای ملت ای ملت.
Latest updates on the ongoing riot is that the protests have reached hundreds of locations nationwide. People from all parts of the country joining the protests, with that toll exceeding over 500, most of it likely underreported. Internet restrictions remain in place, arrests continue, economic conditions remain unresolved, protest momentum fluctuates but has not fully subsided. The protests began due to economic collapse, currency devaluation and inflation. They escalated due to state repression and political frustration. The movement has become one of the most widespread challenges to the Islamic Republic since 2022. At least 544 people have been killed in the nationwide protests, according to the US-based human rights activist news agency, also known as HRANA, which tracks down casualties from multiple sources. This figure includes both protesters and security personnel, and rights groups say the number may continue to rise as more information comes in. While the government has contained some street activity through force, the underlying economic and political causes remain unresolved, making renewed unrest likely. The current protests in Iran go beyond economic frustration. What began with anger over inflation and a collapsing currency has now grown into a nationwide challenge to the Islamic Republic, spreading across all 31 provinces. Despite arrests, force and internet shutdowns, the core economic and political grievances remain unresolved, making continued instability likely unless meaningful reforms are pursued.